Good afternoon, everyone. Well, if you're in LA, it's still probably morning time, but for the rest of our listeners out there, it's afternoon. I know for our friends over in Europe, God, it's we are almost no, it's afternoon, no, it's evening, isn't it? It's not quite after midnight yet. So, for our friends in Australia, hey, how y'all doing over there? Y'all probably have a midday lunch or something like that. We get ready to do an interview right now, so go ahead, tell them your name right quick.
Bruce Brenneise,
Now, our illustrator and author.
illustrator.
See, he's an illustrator. You got to watch these guys. They slick around here. So first up, right off the bat, I always ask this question pretty much first. How many times did it take submitting? 1, 5, 10, 100?
Once.
What is with these illustrators with this one shit? I told John I'm gonna take money. I'm taking bets next year. Because, when I talk to the authors, it's 5, 10, 14, 18, 47. One guy actually took in 47 tries to get in. A bunch of people were like somewhere in the middle. But last year I noticed there was a lot of authors, a lot of illustrators that got in first or second. Why do you think that is? Any reasons?
I suspect that the contest is better known in the writing community than the illustration community. So a lot of times when people finally find out about this contest, they're already far enough along towards their career that it doesn't take that long.
Well, there's some great artwork here, so I'm not going to say this. Last night, everybody got to see their authors last night, I should say. So, ladies and gentlemen, last night they had the reveal. So the illustrators do the artwork for the covers or for the artwork for the different stories in the anthology, but the authors don't get to see it until the night of the reveal. So, I walked in last night as usual. Man, there's a lot of crying going on, a lot of tears.
So emotional, yeah.
It's a very emotional thing. So, were you happy with the artwork? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but.
Well, I wasn't one of the winners this year. I was a winner from a previous year, so I didn't have an author to go off of.
So, in that year, were you happy?
It was amazing. Yeah, the author that I worked with, Janie Bell, came immediately to the piece. She knew exactly that it was.
Amazes me.
It was the one, and she was emotional, and we hugged, and it was just. Really
that's something.
Moment.
So this is my 4th year working with these people in a 4th season, I should say, and it amazes me how they pick it out. They walk right in, and I'm like, because I know the first time I see, I thought, oh well, they must tell them where everything's at. And then I realized they didn't because they walk in and you see the piece in there going. And that just tells me they're doing good enough work that they're identifying the art with these stories.
Yeah, it's the connection between the word and the art is kind of almost like a form of telepathy, I guess you could say.
Well, I hate to admit it, but a lot of times when I get a book, it's because of the cover. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, that's why we get jobs.
I know. So a friend of mine said, I said, dude, I look at the cover. I said, the cover. Wow, that's a badass looking cover. Because if it's a good illustration and it's truly representing the story, then you know that the book's going to be decent when you look at it. And or sometimes somebody just hires a really good illustrator because it's a crappy book. But
right.
It goes both ways.
Still get you intrigued.
It is. So you've been enjoying being here. I know you're here. So I know it gets crazy around here sometimes with everybody doing stuff, and at least you're not with the authors not having to do a 24-hour story, which is just
a little bit more laid back for me.
Illustrators have a little easier job, and I should say easier job. But so you've met Dan Santos and Echo and Tom and the whole bunch and Larry. They're a great group of people.
Oh yeah, and I knew some of them well before all of this as well. I studied with Dan Dos Santos on a number of occasions.
Well, Dan's a good guy. I like him. I met him about 3 years ago. Him and his wife actually, and they're very good people, very level-headed. Actually, because of him, I actually learned how to shadow something. I can shadow my stick man now.
Yeah, that's a good improvement.
It is. He was laughing when I told him. I said, "No, dude." I said, "No, I understand it now." I said, "I can still only draw a stick man." I said, "But I can shadow around the stick man." I thought he was gonna pee himself. I was laughing so hard. It's just kind of one of them funny things. So, any favorite pieces? For you personally.
You mean from this year or
from yesterday? I should say. Let me clarify from the reveal yesterday. You seen anything that stood out? I picked 3. None of them are probably going to be the winner. It's the 3 I personally like.
It's really hard to tell. I feel like in my year I had an idea of at least the top 3 who might have won, and it wasn't who I expected necessarily. But I also think that they judge based on who made the greatest effort as well. Like they're looking at a number of different things, so it's hard to say. I mean, there was a lot of good work there, for sure. I thought that one with the old man reaper kind of looks like he stepped out of a corporate office. He's got his scythe was a pretty fun one, for example.
I mean, I liked all of them. I'm not gonna lie. It's just some of them stood out, and there was one particular one I seen. It was a female. I think there was some coyotes, and it was a pretty picture. I don't think it's gonna win, but I think it would actually look really good as an oil. It was something about it was such a soft picture that I could just picture it on an oil base, on an oil canvas because of the way it looked. But I liked what's her names with the city. For some reason, it popped out when I seen it. Maybe it's because it stood out. But I will say this: when I first seen that photo, it took me to like Tokyo or Beijing or Hong Kong. It just gave me that feel that's where I was there.
Sure.
So I like that, but I mean, I'm not a judge.
I mean, they're probably going for like a cyberpunk futuristic thing, which always has that kind of vibe.
And I've seen quite a few others that had a good bit of detail in it, and then some places it looked like they might have slacked off a little bit.
That can definitely happen.
Or maybe they didn't have the skill to draw a particular thing. But I mean, look, I'm not criticizing because, like I said, I can't draw anything. So I've seen enough of them now and listened to Echo and Tom enough that I have an idea what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And but I liked all of it. I'm not gonna lie, I liked all of it. Some I liked more than others.
Sure.
And then I seen April said hers was pretty cool. I wasn't real happy with her person, but I loved her dragon.
Oh, she's very much into the dragons. You can always tell when an artist has a passion for a
particular
thing.
Gorgeous. Yeah. I was like, so. But like I said, I'm not an artist. So what's aspirating? What you looking to do this year? Make some money for sure, but
always. I'm doing conventions. I'm gonna hopefully be at Dragon Con this year. I'll be at Gen Con. I'll be.
Well, if you're at Dragon Con, I'll see you. I'll be there.
Yeah. See you there if I'm there. I mean, we don't know yet, right? Yeah, they're letting people know if they got in or not. There's already a few people.
Two years on Dragon Con a lot of times for a lot of different things. I was talking to the owner last year. John introduced me to him, and we were talking. He said, "Well, some things you can get in pretty fast, and some things you may have to."
Art show they jury in each year, so I'm expecting to hear back sometime in May on that one.
Yeah, so. I had a lot of staff. There's some good people over there. I'd never been to Dragon Con. That was my first time.
Yeah, I would say of all the shows that I've done, the art show there probably treats the artist the best.
That's a good thing. I mean, I've seen. I know Jody was there last year, and I ran across some. She was with the authors part, but I ran across some other people I had seen that were here that were working, and then a lot of people were stopping by John Emily's booth, or Writers of the Future's booth, and hanging out for a for a little while. Which I think it's cool. They let them do that. Come sit and sell their art or sell their books.
Yeah, and I typically do a panel with them at some point, at least for the last couple of years.
Which is always a good thing. The only way anybody's going to learn this stuff is to educate them on them. And it seems like when I was growing up, it was a little different the way things got educated. Today, it seems like people are either into it or they just don't want to bother with it at all. So I have 3 daughters that are very talented artists, but none of them to be artists. 2 of them won big contests and still didn't want to be artists.
Sure.
I actually submitted one of his work without telling them. They won first place, won $15,000 and a scholarship. And she's like, I don't want to do that.
And that's totally fine. I mean, honestly, like however someone wants to interact with art, there's so many different ways. And I don't think that we need to put some, additional value on like this separation of pro versus amateur. Someone can get everything that they need from art and from doing art, just in an amateur sense of not pursuing jobs with it, or they could pursue jobs with it, right?
I got some friends that do what I call corporate art, but and they get really big money, but it's to me, it's not really art. It is, but it isn't. I don't know how to explain.
It's decor.
It's really because it's a lot of good stuff and all, but it's not what I would consider art. And a lot of it's generic or it's produced in mass.
Sure, and it's intended to be generic for that kind of setting because that's what the corporations want.
So, what's your feelings on AI art?
My feeling is that it's
shoot the computer. That's what I say.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the side of let's bring in the Butlerian jihad against AI. I think this is going to do a lot of damage.
I do.
I think that anyone, sometimes people will set up the straw man argument of like, oh, well, it's not going to destroy all art. Well, of course, it's not going to destroy all art, but it's going to destroy a lot of art careers.
Well, because of companies like mine who would go out and hire somebody to make a banner or a logo for us, a lot of us now are just going to go generate it. Because I was Jeffrey Weiners who turned me on to this. And he said, well, let me generate you a new logo for your thing. So I told him what I wanted. Some bitch was really good.
Yeah.
And I would have had to pay big money for that same banner if I'd have done it for somebody else. But now
that's a job that won't get paid. Yeah, exactly.
So it's not going to get paid, but I also can't copyright it.
Yeah, so there are some limitations. The legal limitations are a big one that might help preserve quite a few jobs, especially for high-end gigs. But the problem is, with an artist, you need to have ways to support them from the very beginning of their career too. It's hard enough getting on those bottom rungs of the ladder. And so it's a lot of the bottom rung jobs that have just been chopped away. And now you almost have to be in a position to fund yourself for 10 years worth of improvement before you're really getting to the higher end jobs that AI can't replace as easily. And I do tend to think of the whole thing, it's kind of like you're burning down a rainforest. Maybe you don't get the whole thing. There's still some sections of forest that are left, but all the animals are crowding into those last little copses of trees, and they're degrading the environment. So it's
definitely squishing the competition together.
Yeah.
It's I personally am not a big fan of it. I mean, it was pretty and it looked good, and he even generated a comic book with it. And he told it a little story, and it told it what he wanted. Not only did it generate the comic book, it generated the pictures and the balloons and everything else.
Yeah.
So for someone like me, if I wanted to say, oh, I wrote a comic, but I can't own it, so why bother?
Right.
But
Yeah.
And that's the other problem with the art that they made for us. I can use it, but if somebody else decides to use it after we
They can also use it.
So
yeah, that's right.
I can't risk that because I'll just sink into a tizzy somewhere.
So the one thing that makes me feel a little safer about some of my jobs is that I literally am getting directives from these corporations that I work for saying, don't use this stuff because we can't have the IP problems, we can't have the legal problems.
And I think, honestly, I think a lot of corporate people, especially the ones that are ex-geners or older, they probably want to have a real person to talk to. They don't want to talk to Jerry the computer. They want to and then they want feedback, because I have seen some stuff generated off of AI, which is completely stupid and ignorant. A friend of mine, Jason, said he wanted a picture of a dingo fighting and a kangaroo, and a 5-legged dingo and a 3-eyed kangaroo with another eye, or 4-eyed, because he had an eye on his tail. I'm like,
right.
What the hell is this?
Mutants.
and so he's kind of, well, this is not actually working. So, and I think now that it's tax and everything, it may even start screwing up a little more, because there's so much for it to choose from.
Yeah.
It has access to the entire internet, but I don't like it. And I am grateful that artists usually do proofs and stuff ahead of because I know a lot of artists like to sketch something, and then they'll do this, and then they might put it on their computer and do,
finish painting it out and coloring it. Yeah.
So you have steps, so you can prove your art, which is a thing. The artists don't actually have that.
It's true. Yeah, it's a little more difficult. Although I think that with AI of text, the coherency of the whole thing can tend to break down when it's AI.
I think you're right, because I noticed somebody generated a novel with it. Well, we won't call it, but anyway, book. And I noticed when you got about 2/3 of the way through it, some of it was just jibber jabber. It was just words, like word salad.
Right. Maybe in one chapter your protagonist has a cockatoo, and then in the next they've got a cocker spaniel.
It was kind of weird, and I was kind of like, well, I'm not going to worry about it. For me, it's not that big of a deal because I don't make money off of that. I do from time to time generate stuff. We'll have we know a lot of artists, we know a lot of authors, so sometimes we'll feature some of this stuff, or we'll let them create a banner for the page, and then they can sign the banner or the logo because it gets exposed to a couple million people. And so we just consider it a free swap. We let them do that, and then we expose it. And then, of course, sometimes we'll use it on some of the archives and stuff like that. So it just gets a lot more exposure that way. People know who they are. And we don't mind doing it because we're like everybody else. We're trying to make a living too, and we know how it is.
Yeah.
We know how it is to be poor, is what I should say.
That's right.
And it's tough. It's a tough business. All of it is.
Absolutely.
I want to see, and somebody asked me the other day, why do you do this? I said, because sometimes some of these people will get butt-ass famous, and I'm like, I know them. I said, I'm going to get autographs. Hold on. Because some of y'all are. I mean, I know most of the illustrators I met here have started to have careers now, and some of them were younger, so it was just getting them into it.
Hmm.
Some of them were a little older that were already making a little bit of money, but now have, it's nice to have writers of the future underneath your belt. I mean, it is still a big contest.
Yeah, and a great networking opportunity, a great opportunity to get a lot of information that you'll need to hit the ground running in the industry.
Did you ever take any? Did you ever use any of this stuff off their websites? I know Wolf Moon's over there, and they got the blog, and they got the off of writersoffuture.com is what it is. And I know some of the illustrators went over and used it, some didn't. I don't know if they needed to, So
Use what exactly?
they had like I think it's just a blog for the illustrators. For the writers, they've got a course.
Oh, okay.
But I think for the illustrators, it's just a blog. Just peers probably is all it is, just talking back and forth. I always give this, you already probably know this, but I always give the young ones advice. Don't ask your mom and dad what your artwork looks like.
No.
Constructive criticism.
Mom and dad will always be happy to pin it up on the refrigerator. Yeah. They're not a constructive critic.
That's my middle stepdaughter. She's like, what do you think? I said, I think it's fabulous, but that don't mean squat.
Exactly.
But she had done a lot of artwork, and that's one of the ones. And I sent her to school. She wanted to get into corporate art, basically, and then she just decided it's not what she wanted to do.
Sure.
She got into business management, is what she did, and she's really happy doing it. And
that's the important thing.
She still does her art, but she told me one time, she said, "This is a release for me. It's relaxation for me. If it becomes a job, then I lose all."
Sure.
That
yeah, and that's kind of what I was meaning earlier when I said for some people, keeping it amateur, keeping it your own personal, like relaxation, meditation, whatever you need it to be, totally fine, right? It's different for each person.
So let me ask you about the different cons, and there's a lot of different cons, and they're all over the freaking place. And
every city.
So I mean. So I know you have the big one in San Francisco. Or is it
San Diego?
San Diego. Sorry, guys, San Diego. I'm not from California. We're gonna tell you. I know it's supposed to be the biggest. I don't know.
I haven't actually done San Diego because it's really more of a celebrity petting zoo these days.
Oh well, then screw that.
It's less about the art. I mean, you can certainly sell some art there, but it's also very expensive and very difficult to get in. There's a long wait list and all the rest of that. And I do know some artists who still kind of hang on there, and they're like subdividing their booth like 4 or 5 ways in order to pay for even just having an appearance there.
Yeah, some of these freaking booths are expensive.
Oh yeah, thousands of dollars for sure.
When I first got into lecturing, we used to have to pay for our area. I was like, what? How much is this? I said, it's a table and some chairs. How much you want to pay?
Yeah.
I get frustrated with them. But now I'm known well enough that I don't have to pay when I go, but still.
And a lot of cons, they don't even give you a table and chairs these days. You pay a couple $1,000s, you get a square of concrete. That's it.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I know when Writers of the Future come in, they bring the mats and everything.
Yeah.
They bring everything with them. And that's just kind of sad. I mean, you should at least get some kind of basic setup.
You should. And part of the problem that causes is that artists or creatives or whatever who are flying in from elsewhere, they can't carry that stuff on the plane. Yeah, so if you have something, then you can potentially have an easier time to fly across the country and put in an appearance where people haven't seen you before.
Well, it's funny because last year a good friend of mine had a booth up there, and he said, Joe, I know you're coming up. I said, yeah. He said, and I heard you rented a Toyota 4Runner. Not even when I was asked, he goes, can you bring some stuff up for me? I said, what do you mean, can I bring some stuff up for you? He said, Joe, when I got to the airport, they wanted like $700. I was like, what do you mean? He said, it was too heavy. I said, is your wife at home? He said, no, she's with me. I said, well, how am I going to get to it? He said, well, I'll tell my mom to let you in. And I said, you got to have somebody over there pack that shit in the truck, because I ain't packing it. So I did. I brought it up to him. But I've noticed a lot of them, like last year when I was there, a lot of them leave stuff behind because they don't want to bring it. And that bites because that's money, it's just money leaving behind. And
I mean, at this point, like when I do a backdrop at a show, I'll typically have, I'll order a new backdrop, photo backdrop that I can put banners on from Amazon, and I'll have it delivered there. And then like last day of the con, I'll kind of like walk around, see if there's any artists in my row who might be able to use it. Like, hey, do you want to take this? It's free if you want it. It costs less for me to do that than to have a third item of checked luggage to fly across the country with.
Unfortunately, it gets expensive, especially if you have to bring your artwork with you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I know somebody the other day said one of the authors was bitching with the Illustrated stuff don't weigh as much, so it depends how much they bring with them.
Yeah.
And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, they can bring a lot more stuff than y'all can." I said, "You can bring X amount of books because they weigh so much." I said, "Obviously, the prints and all are lighter, so you can bring more, but it's still going to basically come out as much, same thing."
Yeah, and you also have size restrictions because if you want to have a high-end item like a very large print or a painting, even like that's not going to fit in your luggage.
No, that's not going to fit in your luggage. I know writers of the future always bring those Earth Final Conflict pictures with them, which are nice. I'm thinking, man, it's a small fortune to ship these things around.
Yeah.
You know, but that's what you want to do. It's what you do. Because I got one of those framed setup pictures, John.
Mm-hmm.
It's really nice. I think it was signed. It was on 82nd or 86th. So it's worth a little money, but I still don't know how he does it. See, I'm lucky because a lot of the southern cons, I'm all in driving distance.
Sure. Yeah. It's relatively convenient.
Atlanta's only a 5-hour drive for me. It's not a big deal. Houston's only a 5-hour drive for me. So there's lots of cities that, Pensacola, Jackson's about 7 hours, 8 hours. So I'm in reach of a lot of big cities where they have a lot of stuff going on. And I like to drive, so it's a plus for me. But coming out places like here, there's no way I'm flying.
Sure.
I know last year we went to a conference actually in Seattle. And it cost me like $400 in luggage. No, it's $575 in luggage because I had bought some stuff. I brought some artwork and some books. We represent different authors that we work with, different artists that we work with. So we'll sometimes stock some of this stuff. On the new website we're putting up right now, we're going to have a page where anybody can put their artwork, and we take, I think it's 5%, and they take the rest. But we're not greedy, and so we just let them put over. So sometimes when we're traveling, if we've seen something that's done well on a site, we'll bring it with us, and we'll just set it on our table because there's a big United Public Radio. We got the roll up there to make it easier on us, but so we'll bring all that with us. But man, I got a plan. How much? Fortunately, everything's sold out.
So you don't have to bring it back. That's good.
And it paid for everything. So that was very nice. But still, I cannot see. I just don't know how anybody's young. I shouldn't say young, but anybody who's starting at any of this is making it right now. And plus, with the price of everything, it's got to be outrageous.
Yeah, it is an expensive thing, and like you have to have a little bit of money saved aside so that you can be like, okay, I can invest this much to try out and see what's gonna stick. And especially with conventions, like if you don't have at least $1,000 to spend to get yourself started in conventions, you're probably not going to have a very good time of it.
No, yeah, because and then like Chris was telling me, he said, I gotta pay for this, I gotta pay for this, and I gotta pay for my hotel room. And he said, doing the conference, these damn hotel rooms are expensive. I said, you have to stay right there. You got a car, dude. But when you're traveling, you're not renting, because if you got to rent a car, that's just another expense. So, you want to be, one thing about DragCon, the 5 hotels are right there.
Yeah. And
so you will get a workout. Ladies and gentlemen, if you ever go to DragCon, I will tell you, you're going to get a workout. That's all I'm telling you. I stayed at the Hilton, which was about a half a mile down the road. Man, it was just insane, all the people walking up. And people, Atlanta's on a hill. See, up and down the hill, up and down the hill.
That's right.
I'm just warning y'all, because if you want to go, it's kind of a workout. And each hotel represents something different. You get the one hotel where they're selling everything. They got the artists, they got the writers and artists. They got all kinds of stuff, actually. They got all anime people there. I got pulled over last year. A bunch of them just grabbed me and said, "You're not going to interview any of us?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know who y'all are." I said, "I'm not trying to be," because I didn't. I'm like, some of y'all look vaguely familiar from shit my kid used to watch, but so I don't know who y'all. I wouldn't know who should be in it. I wouldn't even know what questions I should be asking. I said, "Look, if y'all really want to be interviewed, we'll sit down and talk, and y'all can just tell me, your story." I said, "I don't know what to ask y'all." But there was a bunch of men and 2 girls that supposedly they had lines around thing, gave me their autographs. I still don't know who the hell they are. And a friend of mine said, "Josh, paid worth $5,000." I'm like, "Really?" He said, "Can I have it?" "No, you can't have it." I still don't know who these people are. I met the guy at FanX. I cut a deal with one of the people at FanX. He's one of the lightsaber guys. And every year now we give away. So he gave away $21,000 worth of lightsabers for Christmas this year.
Wow.
When I talked to him, he said he made about $68,000 off of that. So he was really happy. And I've got 2 at the house. He's just sent me for giggles. It's funny because they give you The ones with, like Luke Skywalker and all those always cost more. Kylo Ren's was $900. And but then they had the other ones that were just generic ones, and they were probably $300 or $400. And people were like, "How much?" I said, "Yeah." I said the same thing. I walked up. I said, "How much you want for this?" I said, "It's a piece of metal, piece of plastic. How much you want for this?" And then the girl tells me, "Oh, you look like you might need to fight again." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She said, "You don't want the tip that's on it, the piece that's on it. You want the fighting." I'm like, "Why?" She said, "Because you like you're gonna bang it into stuff." So this will break. So she changed it out for me. And yeah, she's right. You can bang it all over the place. I had to attack my dogs and my stepdaughter when they really suspected. So I'm sorry. I got completely off track, but it's kind of strange how you do that. So have you been having luck with the conferences?
Oh yeah, a lot. Yeah, it's been going very well.
Because I know I hear some people. I think it has to do a lot with where they position you sometimes.
Hello.
Oh,
I
sorry.
can see the same.
Yes, can you come back in about 20 minutes?
Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I forgot. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, that was our maid wanting to come clean us out of the room. We apologize for the interruption. I'm sorry. Websites where they can find you?
BruceBrenneise.com.
I love when y'all do easy ones, man.
I like to keep it as simple as I can. I mean, I have a complicated last name as it is, but on the plus side, no one else out there with my name.
Well, that's good. It stands out, and that you want something that stands out. You really do. It's I get all this stuff makes me crazy sometimes. Well, so favorite tongue tied. Favorite venue or favorite method that I should say. Let me just change the whole way I'm saying this. So, what do you prefer to do? Like drawing on paper, oil?
Digital is probably what I'm most into. I was an early adopter 20 years ago.
That's the only thing I can use.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I'm most used to. I am actually starting to move back more into traditional stuff. AI, of course, is part of the reason. I'm also working for large IPs like Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering. And so there are more of a collector base for the types of clients that I'm working for now. So it makes sense to try and have some remnant of the thing that is physical.
I don't think I've seen a D&D board in a long time. I used to love to play. I can't even tell you last time I actually had time to see that. So, hey, if you gotta play D&D, it's an involved long game. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's not like 5 minutes. Okay?
Yeah.
It takes a little time.
Especially if it's a campaign. It could be.
Just give yourself a day or more. Let's just say it like that. And, it's fun. I mean, if you understand how everything works, it's really fun to play. And there's so many different things. And then I notice there's so many different cards now. People are making new cards and changing things around.
Oh yeah, there's all sorts of options, all sorts of games, all sorts of third-party companies that are adding their content into the mix. You can mix and match and to your heart's content.
Now, one of the women here are doing specialty decks on TikTok for tarot cards.
Okay.
And she called me and she said, "What do you think I should charge?" I said, "That's a lot of work. It's 72 cards."
It's a lot of work.
I said, I mean, it's just a lot of work. I said, "How are you going to do it? Are you going to try to do it like this, or are you going to make it big and then shrink it down? I mean, what's easiest for you? How would you do that?" I mean, because I don't know. I mean, things that are small, my eyes wouldn't even be able to do that.
I mean, since I'm working digitally a lot of the time, I mean, I can control exactly, and exactly how large I want to work at it. Might be like 3,000 to 5,000 pixels at the largest end, but then I can shrink it down to what it needs to be.
Yeah, because I know she's making good. She one time she said, "Well, I'm gonna charge $100." I said, "You're not charging $100. You better like quadruple that or something." I said, "I'd tell him X amount of dollars a card, man."
Well, yeah, I mean, if she's working for someone else as a client,
she just put it on TikTok one day, and in the first 5 days she got 76 orders. So she's actually now charging $1,000 a deck, which is
okay.
And she said, because she said she could charge more, but she copyrights the deck in case someone wants to sell it, and she does do what she calls some generic stuff in the decks. So she has like a base, and then she goes over whatever the base is for the cards. I still don't understand what the hell she's talking about.
So these are like handmade, traditional. That's how she.
Pretty
Yeah,
much,
that makes sense. I mean, I would say that because I did work on a couple of tarot decks, and those are more situations where they're putting it on Kickstarter and they're selling each copy for $50 or $40 or whatever. But the card that I did, I think I ended up getting $800 for the card that I did. They were charging 500, but then the Kickstarter did really well, so all the artists got extra money.
Yeah, why don't you? We talked about Kickstarter last year, but why don't y'all tell them the audience a little bit about Kickstarter? Because a lot of people don't know what it is. I didn't know what it was until last year.
Kickstarter is just a method where you can kind of prepay for a product in order to make it actually happen. So a lot of creators' products that they might not have the investment to make happen otherwise can be realized if enough people want to make it happen.
So do they still have it if you set a limit and you don't get it, you don't get it?
Yeah, you have to set a minimum amount. Now it's up to you what you set. It might not even be like a realistic amount, but it might be as much money as you needed in order to combine with whatever investment you're putting in to make it happen.
I know, was it last year they told me about that guy who made $40 million off that book. It was like, wait, what?
Brandon Sanderson,
yeah. There you go, Brandon Sanderson, that's it.
I'm doing some art.
On Kickstarter, I was stunned.
I'm actually doing some art for Brandon.
Oh, but see, there you go. You can afford it now.
Oh, well, he could already afford it. He was a very successful author, but yeah.
I know he had some manuscripts on and stuff. John ran me through the whole thing. I was like, how much he made off of what? It just took me a few minutes for the soaking in my head. I said, man, I'm doing something entirely wrong here.
Or one of the indie games that I did work for, like at the very beginning of my career, it's called Slay the Spire, and it like exploded in popularity. They recently had a Kickstarter where they did a board game version of it, and they pulled in $4 million or so, I think. So
that's just crazy when they do stuff.
So it's really about the existing fandom or the existing demand for something. Like if you can tap into the right type of thing, then boy, you can unleash a lot of interest.
I guess if you got enough artwork, it's a good place to put it on there and say, hey, look, help me out with this, or I'm in the middle of this. And
people are hungry for genuine items that aren't just corporate behemoth products.
Yeah, I have noticed that in the last few years that we've got more down to earth ground movement. People are just tired of corporate altogether. Everything in our life is corporate something now, so we're all getting
they've worn out their welcome.
Because I remember when BBC called me one day because they needed to get a broadcasting release and they're not allowed there.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, you're allowed there. I said, you're not broadcasting. You've got to be stupid. I said, man, I'm in good standing. I said, I'm in Iran, Iraq. I said, I'm in good standing through the whole Middle East, Pakistan, everywhere. I said, I'm not screwing it up because you want to go do something ignorant. He said, we're going to pay you good. I said, it's not worth it. I said, I'll just lose a bunch of countries that I'm doing well in.
Right.
And that's just also venues we tell our artists all the time that we're guys said, remember that we're in every country on the planet now. So you can get customized stuff for different things. I've also noticed that the gaming companies have been coming out. There's one that moved to New Orleans, and they're looking for artists, authors, tech people, engineers.
Sure.
And, the guy, I can't remember his name, he moved to New Orleans about 2 years ago. He got 100 jobs up, starting pays $100,000 a year. And you get to keep the rights to your artwork.
That's a big one.
So, I mean, they're going to copyright it because it's going to be on their games.
Yeah.
But you still get to use the artwork later on, which I was stunned by because most corporate companies don't do that.
Yeah, it really depends on the company. Some will keep all the copyright, but they'll license back some rights to sell merch or something with it. It just depends on the company. But a lot of them.
You need to take care of your artist. I mean, or if not, because somebody else is going to take care of them if they don't. So.
That's right. Or they'll just go to conventions and say, forget the corporate work altogether.
It's funny because conventions are such a mixed bag. I got friends that go and make a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
I got friends that go and make no money. I got
Sure.
friends that go and make in between. And I was doing a lecture at Mississippi State, and it came up in a conversation. So we get 10. I said, guys, I can't tell you what the secret is. I said, part of it's position where your booth is.
Sure.
Of course, you got to have good work. I said, you got to remember, you got to stand out. There's 100, 500,000 people.
Yeah.
Your work's got to pop. People go by it. You want it to, stop and look.
Yeah, they've got like less than 10 seconds that they'll give you to decide whether they're interested in learning more or not.
And he said, well, we can do hard sales. I said, you can try to do hard sales, but if it's not something somebody wants, it doesn't matter how hard you try. So they're not going to buy it. It's I like watching all this stuff because it's fun for me, and I'm not I don't have any money in it per se, so I can't. It's not going to hurt me either way. But it's a tough business.
I've heard it described as a combination lock, where you could have like four of the numbers perfectly right, but if you don't have that fifth one right, you're not getting the bonanza.
So I mean, so you've got experience with it now, so that's got to be a lot easier. Your first one was a nightmare, or was it just fun?
My first one was actually pretty good. I invested about 1,000 and got 2,000, and it was located in Seattle, which is where I was. So I just rolled out of my front door each morning and headed down to the convention. I've been doing it I guess this will be my 6th year of doing conventions. And no lie, the first year of conventions, I wasn't making a whole lot. There were certainly a lot that would break even or even lose a little bit of money, but I kept at it. I worked on my salesmanship.
Just want to try to irritate. You ever think have you ever been up to BC, British Columbia?
Yeah.
Because I know they have conferences up there. I didn't know anything about it. We have a show out of there called Spaced Out Radio, and one of my friends, Alfred Weber, lives up there. But he said, no, dude, they got cons all over the place.
Oh yeah, all over the world. I just did one in Abu Dhabi.
Oh, that ought to have been fun.
That was a lot of fun. I mean,
that was fun. I mean, that place itself is just fabulous to start off with. And it's a friend of mine's been trying to get me to go for a couple of years. I said, man, I don't know. They might not let me come back. Think about it. No, it's a great place. And I know, like Jack, he goes to some big thing. He goes to London every year for.
Yeah, probably MGM.
And he said it costs him. He said it's not as expensive as you think. He said between the airfare and the hotels on, he said it cost me usually about $4,000, $3,500 to $4,000.
Yeah, that was kind of around where my break-even point for the Abu Dhabi show was.
And he said he can usually tell because I think it's like 3 or 4 days long. He goes, I can usually tell him the first day how it's going to be. And he said my first day in London, my first time I've been there, first day, he said I sold $5,000. He said my second day I sold another $5,000. He said my fourth day I sold $10,000. He said, I was just ecstatic. He said, I'm never not going back.
Yeah.
And he said, every time he goes back, he said he usually comes back between $5,000 and $17,000. He said, what the hell, people? Between $5,000 and $17,000. It's he makes. Sorry about that, guys. I know my phone was on. It's but he enjoys it. He's an artist. That's what he does.
Yeah. It gives you a lot of freedom. If you can make it work, then you don't have to hustle for the next corporate client or whatnot, and you don't have to rely on them so much that when they underbid you, that you just have to jump on it. It allows you the space to actually negotiate for yourself a bit harder, and it usually works out.
Well, that's I own a general contracting company, which allows me to have the radio station. It's what pays for the radio station. Anytime we get the bond, it's what keeps it afloat.
Yeah.
It's so I've always had that going. So I've always had a shield, which is lucky, but not a lot of people can do that because it takes a lot of time to generate art. It's work.
Sure.
It's not like
Yeah.
you just go, let me. No, that's just not if you want to look good. That's not even. And I'm sure you're probably faster because you've been doing it a long time, but it's still you gotta have the idea, you gotta have the thought.
To it, yeah, the ideation, the refining of the idea as well. There's long stretches of working on an art piece where we call it the ugly phase, right? Before it's ready to be shown, where you're trying to figure out this problem, that problem, and there's a lot to it. People don't realize.
And Dean, I know you're listening. Yes, I'm going to edit out the audio, so before you even write to me, we got regular listeners that are. It's funny, but I have a place on my website where I have colored shirts and colored ties with a donation button because people always want to tell me what shirts and ties I wear. I said, okay, whoever wins it today, you can tell me what color I wear. This morning it was they paid me $200 to wear this shirt and tie today. So hey, see people how easy it is to make money sometimes off of just dumb things. All I can tell everybody out there is keep trying. That's all I can say. I mean, you give up, you're done.
Right.
So, I mean, did you ever really just say, okay, I just can't do this. I'm going to get a regular job. This is just too much for me. Because you look pretty solid. That's why I'm asking.
At this point, I mean, when I came out of art school, I couldn't see a path forward with art. I didn't know what the next steps were. A lot of the resources that exist in terms of blogs and tutorials and all the rest of it, online schools, none of that existed back in 2005 when I graduated college. I was like, well, I'm going to take the advice of my favorite professor and scratch my itch. And aside from art, my other itches are generally writing and travel. So I saw that there was a lot of demand for foreign teachers in China. So I went to China. I stayed there for 6 years, and then eventually came around, and it's like all those resources popped into being in the meantime, and I came back with a ton of inspiration and a ton of energy to make it happen.
I never got to go to China mainland. I've been to Hong Kong before. It went back to China.
Sure.
I've always wanted. I got friends there. See, I got this rule. When I travel, I like to travel. When I go places, I want a local to take me. I don't want to do the tourist gig. I want them to show me.
Yeah.
Because they're going to know where the good restaurants are, the good spots to go visit, and stuff like that. And,
yeah.
A good friend of mine who actually ended up giving me Pioneer Radio in Hong Kong. He took me all over the place. He said, "No, we're not going there. You just stand there for hours. You're not even gonna like the food." So we go to the back room place off. He said, "Food."
Oh, that's the best. Yeah.
The food was just.
You got to do the back alley.
He said it doesn't bother you. I said, "Dude, I'm from New Orleans. All the how can I say this politely? Shitholes have the best food." I don't even know how to say it.
Got to do the mom and pop joints.
Oh yeah,
they're so good.
And, I had a great time, and I mean it's beautiful there. There's a lot of great scenery, and we wanted to go to the mainland, but for some reason they had the border was closed. I don't know what's going on. It wasn't like it was. I don't know what was going on. And,
anything can be happening.
Yeah, well, that's true too. And and it was getting closer to the time that they were going back. So maybe
it might have been sensitive for whatever reason. Yeah.
And so I said, he said, "Well, we can take the boat." I'm like, "No, we get arrested in China." No, we're not going to go sneaking into China.
Not a good place to be taking those kinds of risks.
He said, I my passport. So I got the passport to China. I'm like, "Yeah, but they just said you can't go anywhere." I said, "So let's just leave that alone." And then we went and ate on some boat and toured the harbor. They had great food too. And I'm a big fan of Chinese food. So all sorts of Chinese food too. There's people, I don't want to tell you all this, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but not all American Chinese food is actually real Chinese food.
90% of the stuff here isn't. Yeah.
It's like Mexican food. I took a friend of mine to a real Mexican restaurant in New Orleans. He's like, "What is this?" I said, "This is Mexican food." I said, "That shit you ate at Taco Bell is not Mexican food."
Yeah, exactly.
And he's like, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." And I said, "How much better it tastes?" It doesn't look as pretty, but it tastes way the hell
right
better.
Yeah, there's just so much more flavors, so much more ingredients than what we usually get exposed to.
Any advice for these fledglings we have around here, as I call them?
Oh, I gave them all sorts of advice the other day, but
the lecture you gave
another piece of advice, I don't remember if I actually said it to them then or not, but it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I'm, if anything, I'm a good example of that. I'm 40 this year.
You're still a puppy, man. You're a baby.
Yeah, but point being,
I know.
I took a 6-year detour to China before I actually started working, really working towards my career. And now I'm working for some big corporations like Wizards of the Coast and stuff that all sorts of artists would love to work for. So you can definitely make it happen. It doesn't matter how old you are. And you have to pace yourself according to how your life is.
And I tell people that Germany is not going to happen overnight. Every now and then you might get lucky, people, but for the most part, it's just not going to happen overnight. You got to keep going at it. And then, with the exception of some people get lucky and have a piece that just goes viral or something.
Right. I mean, you can't account for luck. You do kind of need luck in this career,
You do.
but it's the combination of having that lucky break and being prepared to actually take advantage of it.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's an interview I did with this young man named Tom. Y'all should go check it out. And it explains how he got into business and how he made his first money. And it was luck.
Yeah.
With a poster with a picture on it that just went crazily.
Yeah.
It sold too many copies in the first month or something. So, stuff like that can happen. I mean, I'm not saying it can't. And you might be at a conference and somebody sees something and want to run it off in a mega way. But I've noticed that you might know better than this, but I've noticed some companies want to just pay low when you're doing a run like that, 5 cents on the run or 10 cents.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, 10 cents on 30 million copies is still a good chunk of money, but it's not. I mean, it's your work.
Right.
And they want the profit.
I mean, I think right now we're in kind of and even more so with the AI stuff, we're in a supply and demand problem where there's just a large supply of artists and would-be artists coming into the fold, and the companies know that, so they'll squeeze you as hard as they can, which is why it's important to build your own brand, focus on whatever kind of specific things that you like to make that are different from the people around you. Like the weirder, the differenter, the better, because they can't go to other people as easily and they can't squeeze you as hard as easily. So
yeah. This gentleman here knows his stuff, guys. He's actually down here giving a lecture at Writers of the Future this year. He did with he's an illustrator. I got to say something else. But, you look like you're pretty solid. I mean, you look like you're right. So China sounds like it really actually helped clear your mind, is what it sounds like.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And then all that scenery over there can't hurt. I mean.
Yeah, I traveled all over the place. I took the advantage of like, okay, well now I'm not just in China, which is a huge subcontinent of a country already on its own, but like Mongolia is just over there. Myanmar's in the other direction. Philippines is a quick flight away.
Taiwan.
Yeah, so many cool places. Yeah.
Lots of places to go.
So lots of inspiration, and also just being self-reliant, like being on my own on the other side of the world made a big difference too.
And it's something, because a lot Americans, uneducated Americans, have the wrong idea about China. I'm not saying that they're all friendly and sweet people, but the people themselves are.
Yeah. Incredibly welcoming. Yeah.
You can hate on any government you want to, because our government's just as evil as every other government on the planet. It's in different ways, but still, because I'm not going to China, it's evil. I'm like, no.
Your beef is with the government.
Yeah. And really, that's the upper government anyway. The lower government's entirely different. I'm like, it's not the same thing. People got to just, Americans especially, have just a different understanding of China is.
Sure.
And that's because our ignorant media just wants it to be that way. But everybody who goes over there, I know it comes back and goes, it's not like that, Joe. It's not, it's just a whole different thing than what we hear. I said, I bet you it is. I said, I bet you if a Chinese person comes over here, they're like, wow, it's a whole different place.
Oh, yeah. Well, so I was teaching students there, and the impression that Chinese students have of America is that it's an unending gun battle bloodbath, and that they're going to get gunned down like 2 seconds after they step off the plane. And I'm like, well, this sounds like a mirror to the kinds of ideas that Americans have about China, that they're going to get thrown in jail by the Communist Party or something the second they step off the plane. Neither one's accurate.
I know. I've known at least 100 people who had no problems. The only country any of my friends ever had traveling was Russia.
I can believe it.
He said every time they go in, they say they're a spy. He said, I had all these cameras with me. He said they confiscated everything until I left.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? He said, yeah, Joe, they made me really nervous. He thought I might be going to jail. He said, I'm going back to Russia. That's it. He said, but everywhere else he's traveling, and I've traveled a lot. My wife's traveled. My wife was a military brat, so she was all over the place. It's you gotta take everything you hear on the TV with a grain of salt. Is all I can tell everybody. I've learned from traveling myself. The first time I ever went to Mexico, I thought Mexico was this. I got down there and it was this. And I was like, oh, well, it's not quite what I thought it was. Now, Tijuana is different, Pete. Tijuana is just Tijuana. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah.
But Mexico City is much different than what people tell you it is. It's not, you're not going to get gunned down the street. They don't really mess with you. I would tell y'all to stay away from the tourist places, because that's where the crime lords might go. Everywhere else is.
Sure, yeah.
It's nice fun.
You use some common sense and some awareness of your surroundings. It goes a long ways, because usually dangers tend to congregate in like certain neighborhoods or certain areas.
That's true too.
Certain times of day, maybe. Like you use a little bit of common sense about where you're going and when you're going, and you'll be safe.
I always tell everybody who comes to New Orleans, don't travel alone. Don't leave the French Quarter. Unless you're at an escort. And they're like, why? I said, because there's some dangerous neighbors on the outside. It's the French Quarter. And I don't want to see no y'all get killed or robbed or mugged or something else. It's just one of the things. So I know since you were in China, did you do any kind of art reflecting China itself or the surroundings, the scenery?
It certainly made its way into my art. I've done pieces. I did a piece for, actually it was a Mexican gaming company a few years back that was like, okay, the Elven Court meets Imperial China. And so I was able to directly draw on my experiences there. I was like, okay, where would the elves live, and where would they put their city in a hypothetical fantasy China? And there was a national park there called Zhangjiajie that I used to hike, every few years. And I was like, oh, well, this is the perfect location, and we can have like, towers of rock with like Elven City built up and around it. So it definitely had a direct impact.
That's always a good thing when you can bring your environment into what you're doing, or things that are in the back of your head or stuff like that.
Mhm.
I actually myself use it for when I'm doing lectures and stuff, because sometimes I'll get to a point where I'll go to a place I've been, so here I'll describe it as something I'm talking about, and I'll bring that out in the lecture itself. But it's just funny these days. I know for y'all and everybody else, it's not just the economy. It's just everything be in a, I don't want to say a lurch, but
Like
it
a
just-
funk.
yeah, it's just like just hanging there. And the funk, just all of us are waiting to see what the next shoe is going to drop.
Sure.
And then we all are paying outrageous amounts of stuff. So one of my customers just recently said, "Joe, you doubled your price." I said, "I don't have a choice." And I know all my artist friends and even a lot of my authors have gone up on their prices.
Yeah.
Guys who were doing like $3 books on Amazon now are charging them $12, $14, $15 because they got
You have to. Yeah.
What are you going to do? And
You got to buy food.
and I got a friend who likes to do prints. He puts them on there, and he'll sketch it out and give it to a print. He was selling them for like $1.99, $15.99 now. And everybody's bitching, but there's nothing he can do. He's got to eat. He's got to pay his bills.
When it comes to art, I prefer to think of art as a luxury item of sorts, even if it's a minor luxury rather than a commodity. I don't want to be in a position where I'm like pricing myself down to the floor because I've got my piece of fan art that's basically a potato, and the other person across the aisle has their like same fandom, same fan art, basically a potato, and we're like trying to see who's got the cheaper potato. Like that's not a good market to be in.
I'll tell you a secret I learned a long time ago. When you do things cheap, a lot of times people won't buy it. So
Yeah.
Some things people expect to pay more for. As a general contractor, if my bid is a low bid, they ain't gonna hire me.
Yeah. There's a term for that. They're called Veblen goods. That they actually get more desirable the more you charge for them. Like all your luxury things, your Gucci and Rolex and whatever, all fit into that bag. And I think that in many cases art does too.
It is. It's a luxury item. It's something, and you need to price it as such, because you can't price yourself out of business, and don't down on your own work. I tell people that all the time. I said, look, well, if it doesn't sell, it doesn't sell. But I said, okay, let's put it this way: you sell 10 at $1 each, you made $10. You sell one at $20, you've already doubled your money.
Yeah.
I said
you can miss some sales,
Plus, you're working yourself harder because you got to produce 10 of these, for no, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
It's just you've got to stand up for who and what you are, and it's in almost any industry these days.
Yeah, and you have to price in the back end too, because generally, like as an artist, you're a freelancer, self-employed. You're taking care of your own retirement. You're taking care of your own, healthcare and everything. Like. You have to consider that when you're pricing your prints and any other product.
And I notice a lot of the young people I've talked to, I shouldn't call them young people, a lot of people I've talked to in the last 4 years don't understand that.
Mm-hmm.
You're no longer working for a company. You're not getting a W-2 form at the end of the year.
That's right.
You're going to have to submit a 1099. You've got to figure out how you're going to get your own insurance. You're going to figure out how you pay your bills. There's no steady check with a steady income on it every week.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing it. And to be honest with you, I am totally honest. For me, it's much more fulfilling to me. I enjoy my life much better.
Absolutely.
Working for corporate companies irritated the hell out of me when I was young.
Yeah.
And I was well sought after because I had a lot of different skills. But man, I was like, no, I'm tired. I'm putting 60, 70, 80 hours in for somebody else. If I'm doing that, I might as well be working for myself. And that's where I've been ever since. And I tell people, it's not easy. I warn people up front, there's a lot of stuff you're not going to understand.
Yeah.
And I do notice with these people, like the year before last, Dean Wesley and I had a bunch of them out there. We were describing what you should start with. I don't know how to put my money. Should I open a corporation? I'm like, no. I said, you got $5 million in the bank? I said, no. I said, you don't have a corporation. Don't worry about it. How about an S corp? I said, no, not an S corp either. I said, maybe an S corp, depending on what it is you can do. I said, sole proprietorship works pretty good.
Yeah.
S corps you can use because they can protect you on some things. I said, if you don't have a bunch to protect, why spend the extra money?
Right. Like you can learn some of that more complex stuff as you're starting to actually make some real money. Like, once you're making more than like $60K a year or something from your art, then you can start worrying about some of those things.
That's what I told them too. I'm like, well, you're not going to worry about that yet. So unless you have big money in the bank, I wouldn't worry about it. I said, or if you got a lot of something at risk. I said that as an artist or an author, really, unless you're stealing somebody's work, I don't think you got to worry about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think the other one that can potentially come up is if you're at a convention and you've got like a big booth display, it falls over on
No,
someone,
that's
you
true.
know, then you might have a problem. But like, yeah, we're talking about relatively rare risks.
And it's unfortunate, you know, people remember when you get into this, you have to think about all of this. You got to think about how you're going to eat, you know, how you're going to feed your kids, how you're going to take care of the wife. You know, wives want stuff, people, in case y'all didn't notice. I'm just kidding. Any part words before we get out of here?
For any artists out there, just keep fighting the good fight. I know that it's really scary times, especially with AI right now. But you know, you got to fight the dying and the light.
You know, since you said that AI, sometime in the near future, I'll invite you to this. We're going to do, it's going to be a 3 hour show, but we're going to bring on 5 or 6 illustrators, 5 or 6 authors, from writers of the future, and maybe John and because, you know, John. You know, it's funny when Jeffrey told me about this, I called John the next morning. I was like, John, what the, I can't say because we're on air, but I was like, what the what? And we got to talk. He said, oh no, that's going to be illegal. They can't be able to do that here. And I was like, because I was instantly worried. I got to, because I know a lot of these people.
Yeah, yeah.
You told me this 5 years ago. I said, well, what the hell? But I know a lot of these artists and authors now.
Yeah.
I want to see them make it. So I was just like, no, this has got to be protected. And they're going to have to figure something out with that. So I figure we do a panel and see if it's for, or at least tell some of the rookies out there how to protect themselves.
Sure, absolutely.
Because Jerry had done a piece. I don't know how to describe it. It's you remember old picture with the dogs and playing poker?
Sure, yeah.
So he did a piece kind of opposite of that, but just a weird ass piece. So he put it online, and the guy the company who was carrying the dogs and the thing sued him. And he was like, well, why? It's not even close to this thing. So it went to the court. The judge said, I can see why they thought, but he said, no, it's not. He said, first off, they're playing backgammon, they're not playing cards. So the judge said, I don't even see what you're going on about this. And it wasn't dogs. He had a ferret, he had a chihuahua. Anyway, it's just weird. So the first table, he had a ferret and a chihuahua playing backgammon. So, but he did like a U table and get like seven sets playing. It makes a lot of money. And I would not, you could give me money to put that in my house. I'm just telling you now, you can even, I told him, I said, you want one? I'm like, no. You should put it in your studio. I'm like, no, it's not going in my studio. I said it's never going to happen. You know, but you know, different strokes for different folks.
That's right.
Do you ever dabble in oil? Do you ever play with it or?
With what?
Oil.
Oil? I haven't done anything with oil. I'm working on learning with acrylics and watercolor and gouache. So I am playing with traditional painting and everything, but
well, I mean, oil. I mean, acrylics. We were talking about this the other day because you know we do a lot of painting. And we've kind of phased oil out of everything, and everything is basically silicone. I mean, just acrylic paint is what it is.
Yeah.
And which the difference what it is, 500 years now, it still look the same way.
That's right.
You're not gonna get that fade. You're not gonna get that crash.
Plastic is pretty close to permanent.
Pretty much what it is. Because somebody told me, she said, well, what are you putting on my walls? I said, basically, I'm having the guys roll rubber on the walls. And really, you looked at me. I said, no, really. I'm putting silicone. She's like, what? I said, it's acrylic-based paint. I said, that's why you can wash it off with a rag. Don't feel like it doesn't fade. She said, why? I said, because it's basically a sheet of rubber on your wall. But I mean, it's the same thing on a canvas. It really is. I was surprised when we were doing painting how similar the paints were. It was kind of crazy. I said, what else I wanted to ask you? So maybe Dragon Con. You ever been to FanX?
In Salt Lake? Yeah, I usually do it. I'm not doing it this year only because it double booked with Rose City Comic Con in Portland, which is much closer to me.
Yeah, I imagine it.
Even though I would say FanX is overall the better show, but I tend
to. That's a lot of fun,
yeah. But it's nice to just do a show where I can like drive a couple hours down the highway.
Like 6 hours or something from Portland? 8, 6?
No, I'm like an hour and a half from Portland.
Jesus,
so
that's around the corner.
Yeah, so that's why I'm doing Portland instead of FanX this year. But I'm hoping that they sort the dates out differently next year. And even if they don't, I'll be like, okay, well, I guess I'm alternating cons each year, maybe.
Well, I try to get out to different ones every year. Just one, because I like to meet the owners of the cons and stuff like that in case I ever need to do some business.
Yeah.
And, plus, I love chatting with people, so I'll walk around. And some people know who I am, some people don't. It's fine by me. We went in a lot of the anime stuff, and somebody recognized me. Oh, that's what it was. This was so weird. So I'm at Dragon Con, and I was in the anime thing because everybody said, "Come and meet these communities." I'm like, yeah. And, I told you, I didn't know who these people were. So I was getting ready to leave, and this little girl walks up, and she splits her arm. She goes, "How you been doing, Joe?" And I'm like, hey, don't know this girl from Bean, by the way. And next thing I noticed, like 15 of them, they got me in a corner. They were regular watch of UFO Undercover.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, really? And then he got to telling me this. And I said, well, that's great. And I said, well, if y'all want to do some interviews, I'm here for 3 days. Here's my card. Give me a call. I ended up interviewing about 8 of them. And they had a blast. And they're crazy with their anime stuff. And then what's her name kept sticking her tongue out and rolling her eyes back at her. And I said, what the hell is that? She said, it's a thing. And she told me what it was. And I was like, really? It's a thing? She said, yeah, it's a thing. I was like, well, live and learn, man. I said, I don't know people.
Yeah.
You gotta educate me sometimes.
It's a subculture.
Yeah, it totally is. And I was amazed how many people in line to see these people.
Sure.
I was, and they're dressed up in different outfits, and I was just, and these aren't kids we're talking about, these are adults,
Sure.
Like they're 5 or 10.
Cosplay is a big business now, yeah.
It is, cosplay is a big business, and we had some girl on, she dresses like a fox. And I mean, she's cute as all hell. But the problem for me is, I guess because I'm older, they all look like they're 12. I mean, they're all in their 20s or 30s, but they all look like they're 12.
Yeah.
I'm like, get back. Don't even touch me, man. Just totally.
Well, the whole aesthetic with a lot of anime is intending to give like a younger look, right? So that's yeah, I mean, a genuine reason for that reaction.
I'm always asking my Japanese friends how come their eyes are. I said, why do you always give your pictures and paintings such big eyes? He said, those are American eyes. I said, I've never seen American eyes. I said, maybe alien eyes.
Yeah.
I said, I know a lot of people. I said, those are not, it's not an Oriental. He said, well, we don't. There's something about after, because, we took Japan after.
Sure, after, yeah.
And I noticed if you go looking from about 54 up, there's a big change in the way they did everything. And they basically Americanized it, which.
Yeah, it's a reaction to the American occupation from those years.
I guess in some ways it was a good thing, but I hate that we kind of half-assed destroyed somebody's culture. And we were at war, and I'm sure they deserved it. I don't want to get anybody mad at me, but we did destroy a lot of their culture.
Yeah.
It seems like it's coming back now, but still.
I mean, it was a full occupation for a while.
And it's a shame that, because, again, it's never the people. It's always the governments.
Yeah.
And I got a tape I keep at the house from when the admiral of the Japanese Navy said, he told the emperor, you should not wake the sleeping dragon. And because when they asked him to bomb Pearl Harbor, that's what he told him.
Right.
And, it's posted all over these days, but he told him, he said, sir, we should not wake the sleeping dragon. You're not going to argue with the emperor. So
right.
They did. And they woke the sleeping dragon, and they got nuked for it.
Yep. They messed around and they found out.
Yes, they did. A good friend of mine the other day was arguing with me. They should have bombed nuked Berlin. So they would never nuke Berlin. He's like, why? Because it's in the middle of Europe, dude. That's why. I said we could kill half of Europe, but no, it's never going to happen. It was never an option. It never was. But so I'll be looking for you at different conferences. I'll be out.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll run into each other. Keep
an eye out for him. See where if he's approached me, come up and say hi. If you see him buy some art, say, hey, let me get this, let me get that. Wait, before we go, how do you like working with Echo?
Oh, Echo's great. Echo's fantastic. Yeah.
She's fabulous, man. She is a character in the head. If any of y'all ever get to come out here and get to work with her, she is fabulous. She be tough sometimes, but she is fair.
And she knows her stuff.
And if you want to see her artwork, I did her nudie collection, her naughty collection, through her virtual gallery online, and we did a show with it. It's a really good show. If you want to see Tom Wood's art, it's also up there. So eventually we'll have you up there. We'll get you on, let you do the same thing. So what we do is at the beginning of the show, we tell everybody this artwork cannot be used without the illustrator's permission. We say it actually several times through the show. That way, if somebody gets squarely, and besides that, the way the videos are usually set up, you usually can't get it out anyway.
Yeah.
You'd have to actually take the video down, clip it all apart. Most people just don't have those kind of skills.
Yeah.
But we're honest with everybody because we want people to see the work and we want people to know it's for sale, but we don't want them stealing.
Right.
So that's what it comes down to. So
for sure.
I've seen Bruce Wallace came on. He's an illustrator out of New York. He does, how can I say this, weird animal pics. Like he just sports animals is the only way I could say it. So he turns them into, he'll take a dog and turn it into like an alien dog or something. Anyway, he has a lot of fun doing this, but he makes a lot of money doing it.
Sure.
You know, so we put his collection up one time. YouTube actually took it down after 6 months. They said we were copyright infringement. So he called YouTube and said, no, you didn't hear me and see me on the show with him. And because he was making good money off it, he got hacked. They never would put it down.
Yeah, the way that they algorithmically decide these things is just completely inhumane.
They said, nope, no more on that. And I was like, well, I said, we'll bring you back on a couple months, and we just won't run it on YouTube. We'll run it on the rest of the network, and that way you can do it. He's getting ready to send me some stuff for that when we finally put the new storefront up, which won't be for another month or two. We'll either link it to people's art, or we'll put we'll just put the picture in there with the price, and if they buy it, we'll send you an order right off the bat, and we'll let y'all ship it to them. We'll include the shipping in. I know some things are really cheap to ship, but for some reason, I always want to include some kind of shipping in there, and just in case the illustrator needs it for whatever, or the author needs it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they, it can cost. I mean, FedEx and
for
they're
sure,
a little more expensive these days.
Yeah, that's right.
And people, I shipped something to 5 books to Canada just recently. I thought I was going to have to take out a freaking loan, man. It was $144.
Boy.
It was only going to Toronto, too. And I have people ship me stuff from Canada all the time. I got a good friend of mine, Amelia, sends me chocolate. She says Canadian chocolate. I got an American chocolate.
I can believe it.
I said, whatever, send me chocolate, I'll eat it. Chocolate. But anyway, tell me one more time. Tell me your name one more time, where your website is one more time, and I'll let you get out of here.
So I'm Bruce Brenneise, and you can find me at brucebrenneise.com.
I'll switch you right quick. Guys and girls, be sure to go check out Bruce. You heard he's a lot of fun. We were playing around a lot tonight, or today, I should say. I'm so used to doing interviews at night. He did a good job. Any moans, clones, bitches, or complaints, you know who you write to. Michelle DeRoche, not me. Good afternoon, everybody.